Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, Democratic Congressman Al Green filed articles of impeachment against President Trump last week. The charges were short-lived since no action was taken by Congress, no vote was held. But are Democrats losing credibility by levying charges of racism against President Trump, comparing him to Hitler like Congressman Green did? This is clearly the height of absurdity. I don't need to tell you that, but I'm not sure we should brush it off as ridiculous as quickly as we are. Actions like this, without merit, serve to damage the credibility of our republic as a whole, and that should concern us all. This is Congressman Green.
The form of the resolution is as follows. Articles of impeachment against Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, and the Congress of the United States of America. Resolution: resolved that Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, has undermined the integrity of his office with impunity and has brought disrepute on the presidency with immunity.
With me now, former Georgia State Representative and Democratic strategist LaDawn Jones. LaDawn, good to see you.
Thanks for having me back, Liz.
All right, LaDawn, you heard Congressman Green here in this video. He filed articles of impeachment on the floor of the House last week. They didn't go anywhere. It's not an active thing because Congress would have had to vote on that at that time. They chose not to vote for that. Congressman Green actually wasn't even there at the time the vote should have been called. But putting that aside for a moment, just the premise of this introduction of articles of impeachment, I want to ask you, I understand that Democrats don't like President Trump, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with people disliking the president. But what has he done to actually justify articles of impeachment being filed against him?
Well, as you know, Liz, articles of impeachment, which are very much like an indictment in a criminal case, list out the things that a person has done to violate the law. And in this case, President Trump, in his first couple of weeks, improperly used his office for influence by promoting the products of his daughter. He has tried to influence the Comey investigation and prevent Comey at the time when he was still in office from acting in his official duties. All of those things are violations of the oath of office, and those things are, in my opinion, very much impeachable. Now, would I have gone the same route as Representative Green? Maybe not, but he has constituents who he needs to answer to, and they can't continue to turn a blind eye to these very egregious actions.
No, and I agree in a sense. We shouldn't. We should always hold our elected representatives accountable here, even if we share an initial after our name, a party initial. I'm not opposed to that. But even taking the two examples, and we can use your two examples here, when you talk about him promoting or his administration promoting Ivanka's thing, that was Kellyanne Conway, not him. So he cannot be held accountable. He wouldn't be indicted for that crime. It wasn't a crime. It was an ethics violation, and she was punished, I suppose, accordingly for that. In regards to obstruction of justice, I mean, Comey himself testified under oath in Congress that no crime was committed, that obstruction of justice didn't happen. So, I mean, you're an attorney, you know the law, you know that there's not, you don't interpret the law based off of your feelings towards one person, you interpret it based off of the elements. The elements weren't there, the indictment didn't happen, the testimony said it didn't happen. So what exactly besides disliking him or disliking his actions could actually justify impeachment?
Well, so to be clear, for articles of impeachment, an actual crime does not have to be committed. It can simply be a violation of the oath of office. And I don't think that is a far stretch of the imagination, no matter what Comey may have felt, that for us to even read the tweets of Donald Trump as it related to the Comey investigation, he said something along the lines of, I wish I would have known, and with Sessions as well. I think he had a tweet that said, I wish I would have known that he wasn't going to back me up. Otherwise, I would not have appointed him in the first place. You know, those things are really cutting close to the line, and at the very least, this impeachment can or process to try to get articles of impeachment should be a warning to Trump that he needs to back all the way up.
No, to me, it's a much bigger picture than this. It's not just about whether people like President Trump's tweets or not. Again, I don't care if people like his tweets. I don't care if they think it's appropriate or not. Sometimes I don't think they're appropriate. Sometimes I think they're funny, depending on the tweet as a whole. But the idea that someone's filing articles of impeachment simply because they strongly disagree with the philosophy or even the personality of the president, that's dangerous, LaDawn. That is essentially undermining the underpinnings of our democracy, which is sometimes there are presidents that whose policy you disagree with. That does not in and of itself justify impeachment. And I guess going back to the previous administration, there were liberals across the board, including the president himself, who condemned any Republican, any conservative, and by the way, I also condemn them, for trying to delegitimize President Obama by saying he wasn't born in our country. They said that that was racist. They said that undermined the presidency, that delegitimized him, and that it was not appropriate to do. I agree with that. But why is the standard different for Democrats when it comes to President Trump? They are trying to delegitimize him. They are trying to steal the presidency from him. They are trying to unseat him. How is that appropriate when it's President Trump if it wasn't appropriate for President Obama?
Well, President Trump, and we have to all admit, this is not just about disliking him. President Trump is definitely skirting the lines of what is appropriate under the law much more than anything that President Obama could have been. This is not just about race. They're not trying to get rid of him simply because he is a white man. It is because of his policies, his actions, the way that he is very has a disregard for the safety of Americans and agitating North Korea and just doing things that are just much too far. But frankly, Republicans can't really say much about.
Let me interrupt just for a second, because those are policy differences. And like I said, I had zero problem with you disliking how he is agitating North Korea. I didn't like how President Obama agitated Iran or gave them the Iran deal, which I think helped them move along in their procurement of a nuclear weapon. I didn't like how President Obama and his administration lied to us about the Iran deal. But those are policy differences. They're policy differences. They're not acting, neither president is acting outside of the purview of their executive authority. It's simply policy differences. And I guess I would ask, why don't Democrats just back up for a minute and start attacking the policies for the policies? Don't you think that that would help the state of dialogue and even the state of racial divide in our nation if we just argued and debated the merits of the policies instead of pretending like every time someone disagrees with a policy that makes them a racist worthy of being the target of articles of impeachment?
Well, we can't say every time, because this is a first time shot for the Democrats. And frankly, there's a process in place. And that's why the articles go forward. The House has to approve it, and it either goes up or down. Now, Republicans have tried to remove Obamacare a gazillion times by now, even though they consistently lost again and again. Nothing stopped them. So I think if you want to talk about policy,
not a person,
then we should talk about. But the problems with Trump fall into policy. It is bad policy for the president to promote Mar-a-Lago. It is bad policy for the president to have a conflict of interest like Jared Kushner inside of his cabinet. It is a policy problem if the president is using Twitter.
If it's bad policy for the president to promote Mar-a-Lago, then why did Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton promote the Clinton Foundation when Hillary was Secretary of State? I mean, these high-powered people, especially when they come into their offices like Trump did and like Hillary did as wealthy people, they have outside interests. I mean, I'm not condoning using it as an advertising stance. I'm just saying, I guess Democrats are acting like these are high crimes and misdemeanors, and they're simply not. There's no crime that's been committed. There's no misdemeanor that we can see with our own eyes. There's simply policy differences, and President Obama has had as many of his policies overturned by the Supreme Court as President Trump had. So there's really no argument here that he is acting in a way that is counter to our Constitution.
Yeah, but President Trump has only been in for 10 months and President Obama was in for 8 years. So the fact that he's had that many turned over in this short amount of time is an indication that he doesn't know what he's doing with policy. You can't compare the foundation, the Clinton Foundation, who did things to serve citizens, and talking about that versus your private resort on the Florida beach. Like, those two things aren't even in the same boat. Here's the reality.
You're right. They're not, because the Clinton Foundation accepts money from child sex offenders and from Russian nuclear cronies of Vladimir Putin's. And to my knowledge, Mar-a-Lago has never done that. My point is, when going back to the original point of this segment, the thesis of this segment is that when Democrats file articles of impeachment, first of all, we hear no outcry from liberals who made such a fuss every time someone criticized President Obama in the personal sense, criticized his legitimacy. We hear nothing whatsoever. And to me, that indicates a double standard. And the second point of this segment is to say we have no evidence that he committed a crime. If there is, please show me and I'll get on board, because we shouldn't have a president who's a crook, but we don't have any evidence.
Well, again, as I mentioned, a crime is not necessarily a requirement in order for the articles of impeachment to be put forward. I do think that all representatives have a duty to not be petty. They have a duty to listen to their constituents. And there are some real concerns, not just from Democrats, but from your own Republican Party about the actions of Donald Trump, both in policy and personally. And I think that, this was a good opportunity to say, listen, we're not going to let you slide on anything. You've slid for the last 8 months. Now it is time for you to act like a president and stop being a petulant, petty child over every little thing. He continues to lie to the American people again and again. He lied about his what kind of grade he got handling the hurricanes before the Hurricane Maria even came out. He lies so often, it is becoming standard practice. We can't just sit back and say we're okay with that.
Right, but calling it out is different than filing articles of impeachment. And again, the double standards here. President Obama, we had a compilation on the show last year, I think, where 39 different times President Obama said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. If we pass Obamacare, your middle-class families are going to pay $2,500 less on their health insurance. None of those things were true, and he knew that. So that's a lie just the same. The standards are different, and that is my problem. LaDawn, thanks so much for coming on the show. I love talking to you.